Shabbat Shalom. Say Shabbat Shalom to 12 tribes of Yasharal. Say grace and mercy to all of those who are grafted into the body, those who are a part of the Messiah, the Mashiach. Certainly, he said in his word that salvation is coming through him, deliverance is coming through him. So we welcome everybody that is a part of the body of the Mashiach, that's been born into the body, that's been baptized, that has put on the Mashiach. For as many of us who have been baptized into the Mashiach, we have put on the Mashiach. So we welcome all of you here today in this Shabbat class. Thankful that he's given us another Shabbat, another Sabbath that we can count as we move closer to the Feast of Shavuot, which is the Feast of Pentecost, coming up on our Greco-Roman calendar as the 23rd of May, counting 7 Sabbaths from Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we're grateful on today to still hear, having an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying unto the body, unto the assembly, the gathering, those who are gathered unto him, having an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying in this hour, in this day. Our Shabbat classes are not for the faint of heart. These teachings that we share on the Sabbath we go into a little deeper study into the history of Yasharal. And some might say, well, why are you looking at Israel? Why are you looking at Yasharal? Because Israel was the only nation that he had dealt with. Israel was the nation that he had given his covenant unto. And everybody who is of the seed of Abraham, or the seed of the Mashiach, the seed of Christ, is gathered unto Israel. That's who he's coming back for. Israel is made up of natural born bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Israel is also made up of all of those who have been grafted in. The wild olive, the wild branches grafted into the good olive tree. And those who are grafted in comes from many different nations. So it's good to know, who Israel is. It's good to know the covenant that was given unto Israel, and it's just good to have a further knowledge and understanding of His Word. He's given us His Word, and in these days and times that He's given us His Word, it really takes the Spirit to open it up to us, and the Spirit of truth. In St. John chapter 16 and verse number 13, he says, "Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth." This is the characteristic. This is the DNA of the Spirit, and that is to guide you into all truth. If you're not walking in light and walking in truth, in fact, to walk in truth is to walk in His light, to have His Spirit. It will do the guidance. It's very important, this hour that we're in, it's very important that we hear the Spirit of this book, the Spirit of our Father and His only begotten Son. I can't impress upon you how severe the day is and how important it is to hear his spirit. If we're not guided by his spirit into all truth, then you're walking in darkness. And if you're in darkness, then you can fall. You can trip and fall. If you're walking in darkness, you can be deceived. It's easy. This day and hour that we're living it's such a deceptive time. And each and every one of us should really be striving to get closer to him, to hear his voice, to follow that spirit, the spirit of this book. Got to be careful, because in 1 John he says, believe not every spirit, but what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to try the spirits. And we try the spirit. Every spirit that's out there, we try it by his word. So the spirit that you're following, does it line up with his word? Does it line up with his word? Because there's many spirits out there. The spirit of the adversary is to deceive. And we are living in a time of great deception. So on the Sabbath, on the Shabbat, we want to go into his word and get a better understanding, especially when he deals with his people, Yasharal, and he deals with them, and it's really I read something the other day. I wish I would have brought that book down from my office, but it's a book on ancient Eastern cultures, religion, and it talks about the faith and the teaching that came down through Moses, because Moshe was the one that we believe is the author of the book of Genesis. And so, and in this book, it really talks about the religions of the nations, of all nations. Israel was not, you look back in the far, when you look back into ancient times, Israel, Yasharal, was not the only nation that had, the other nations had gods, but Israel, they had the Elohim. And in Exodus chapter 5 and verse number 2 and 3, and it says in verse number 2, Exodus 5:2, and Pharaoh said, who is the Yah, or who is Yahuwah, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not Yahuwah, neither will I let Israel go. And they said, the Elohim of the Hebrews have met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto Yahuwah our Elohim, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with sword. So there's several places in the scriptures here where Yasharal testified unto Pharaoh, unto a heathen nation, that they had an Elohim, and they even called him by his name. Moshe and the nation of Yasharal called him by his name. They were not ashamed of the name. They were the only nation that called upon that name. No other nation called upon Yah in heaven. No other nation did. How deceptive the enemy is. People can live all their life in a church, in the body of the Mashiach, the body of Christ, and never be taught or know the name of the Father. Never. I mean, people have lived and died in what we call the church and have never known his name. Never. And that should alarm you. It really, if you have his spirit, that would alarm you. How can I live all my life and I don't know the name of my Father in heaven? And in fact, not only do I not know it, it's never even taught to me. I'm not even given the option of knowing their name. That ought to be I mean, we fear sirens. When we hear sirens going off in the streets and everything, I mean, it wakes us up. We see the lights flashing, the red, the blue, the white lights just flashing, and the sirens going. And some folks, it causes their heart to beat a little harder in their chest, and a lot of people get, they're fearful. But if you have his spirit, that ought to alarm you that you can live and die and be brought up in what we call the body of Christ and never know the Father's name. It's scary when you understand it, but the reason why we're not alarmed by it is because we've never been taught that it is of value, that it is something that you should know, that you should understand, that it's a name that should be a part of your prayer, of your life. This is our Elohim, and he has a name. But because we are raised in churches, and churches do not teach the Father's name. They don't teach it. The church does not value his name. And that is contrary to Holy Scripture. That spirit, I want to say some things, and like I said, this, the Shabbat classes is not for the faint of heart. It's not for those who are easily shaken, that are fearful and unbelieving. That's not what this class is for. It's not. I'm not here for those who are fearful, those who are unbelieving. That's not why I'm here. We don't know the power of belief or unbelief. We don't know that power, because if we understood that that's what kept Yasharal out of the promised land, and that's what's going to keep a lot of people out of the kingdom that is coming, is simple unbelief. So in Exodus chapter 9 and verse number 1, Exodus chapter 9, verse number 1. Now we read in verse number 5 that Pharaoh said, "Who is this Yahweh? I don't know no Yahweh. Who is he?" Well, he found out who he was firsthand. He found out the hard way. Firsthand, he found out who he was. And I, what I'm saying today is because just listen to this. I'm trying to build on today and build this class. Um, in Exodus 9:1, then Yah said unto Moshe, go in unto Pharaoh and tell him, thus saith Yah Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go that they may serve me. Now, who is speaking in this context, in this what we're reading? Who is speaking here? The Most High. The Most High is speaking unto Moshe. It would be blasphemous for the Most High to call himself capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. That would be blasphemous. The reason why we don't know that is because we have not been taught. We're not taught. So then, if I'm not taught that, and I say that's blasphemous because why would you say that's blasphemous to call him that? Because when you look at capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, you see that in English. But if you break this down and you go to the Hebrew lexicon, and it's H3068, and you look at H3068, the Brown Driver Briggs, and it gives you the 4 letters in the Aramaic Hebrew. Now, Aramaic Hebrew is more of a modern day Hebrew. It's not the Paleo. Paleo predates the Aramaic or modern Hebrew. What predates Paleo is the pictograph Hebrew. And so going to the pictograph Hebrew and the Paleo Hebrew, you see what those letters are. It's 4 letters. And that's what the word, when you hear tetragrammaton is Greek. Tetragrammaton is Greek for 4 letters. That's what the tetragrammaton is. It's Greek for, when I say tetragrammaton in Greek, that's Greek for saying the same thing in English, 4 letters. So in English, I say 4 letters. In Greek, you would say tetragrammaton. It's just, you're saying the same thing. Those 4 letters in the tetragrammaton, or the Hebrew 4 letters, they're actually 4 vowels. They're not consonants. They're actually 4 vowels, and it's kind of like breathing. When you breathe his name, or when you say his name, it's like breathing. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. It's like breathing, and there's no J in the Hebrew language. There's no J. So everywhere where you see a J, it's a softer. It's a ya. These characters are yod, hey, u, hey, yod, hey, u, hey, and it's pronounced Yahuwah. So why is that? Why is that important? You won't see how important that is until you understand the covenant. Many people will say, well, there's no significance to that. There's no meaning to that. We we don't see the value in his name. That's because you don't understand the covenant that Israel agreed to. When he says here in Exodus 9:1, and he's telling them that you got to let them go because they're going to go out and they're going to serve me, he was going to make a covenant with Yasharal. In fact, he had changed the name of Jacob to Israel or Yasharal. He changed his name when he wrestled with Jacob. When Jacob wrestled with him, and he asked him, "What is your name?" Because we'll see, I think it's in Exodus chapter 6, I think that's where it is, where it says Abraham and I think Isaac and Jacob did not know him by Yah. They knew him as the Elohim, but they didn't really know him by Yah, his personal name. So is that in Exodus 6? Is that where that's at? I think it's in, Exodus 6:3. So if you go to Exodus 6:3, Exodus 6:3 says, "And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob," or Jacob, "by the name of Elohim Almighty, but by my name," and here's the tetragrammaton. See that in Exodus 6:3? Now, if you go to the Hebrew lexicon and you see Jehovah, it's the same as capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, and it's 3068. So you click on 3068 and you'll see the 4 letters, which is the tetragrammaton, 4 letters. You see the same thing. And so what he's saying is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they knew me as Elohim Almighty. I have all power in heaven and earth. But by his personal name, he had not revealed that unto them. He says, "But by my name, Yah, was I not known to them." So his personal name, his persona, he did not give that. They didn't know him by that. That's why when Jacob wrestled with him, he says, "What is your name?" He asked him, "What is your Shem? What is your name?" And he says, "It's not for you to know." But he changed his name from Jacob to Israel because Jacob went into Egypt as a family, but they come out as a nation. Now, he had made covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He had made covenants with them, but he was going to make a covenant with a nation of people. And that's why he told him, when you go back to Exodus 9:1, that's why he's saying, you got to let them go so that they might go out and serve me, because he was going to make a covenant with them. You don't see the value in Yod He Ud He, the 4 letters. You don't see the value in that until you see the covenant. Until you look at that covenant that Israel made with him. Now, why is that so important? Because the covenant was broken. He didn't break the covenant. He's not a covenant breaker. He did not break the covenant. But they broke covenant with him. And so he had to restore them back to himself. So in order to restore them back to himself, when he made that covenant with them, he gave them the book of the law. Now, did they keep the book of the law? They broke the covenant. So he even says, "I'm going to give you the book of the law." The covenant went inside the ark of the covenant. That's what the ark of the covenant is. The ark of the covenant, that ark overshadows his covenant, the rod of Moses or the rod of Aaron that budded, and the manna that he gave them in the wilderness. And it's still in the ark of the covenant even to this day. anybody who thinks that that covenant is null and void has misunderstood the very teachings and the tenets of the book of the Holy Scriptures, because that covenant is not null and void. That covenant was made flesh. The covenant that he had given to Israel, that covenant was made flesh. And it dwelt among us. And like John says, we beheld it. We actually handled that, the word, the Torah, the covenant. We actually handled it. Many people were not allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant, let alone look into the Ark of the Covenant. That's why John said, we handled this. We were able to handle the very word of life. We were able to handle that very covenant. It kind of blew his mind. And when you really look at this, it will take you to another level of understanding in him. When the light comes on, when the Spirit of truth comes and he begins to guide you into all truth, you would see what John meant. Oh my goodness, we actually had that covenant was made flesh. That word was made. So you had the Ark of the Covenant, and that covenant was the covenant was inside the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant protecting it. So he made a book of the law to be a witness against them that they broke covenant. So now, do you think they kept the book of the law? No, they transgressed. They transgressed the book of the law. Let's go to Daniel. Let's go to Daniel chapter 9 and verse number 11. Daniel 9 and 11. And it says, yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moshe, the servant of Elohim, because we have sinned against him. So all Israel had transgressed. So when all Israel had transgressed and everybody was cut off from him, being that he is not a covenant breaker and that he made promises to Abraham, then he says, okay, what did he send to redeem them? He says, who is the arm of Yah being revealed to? He sent his arm to redeem them and bring them back. Bring them back into what? To bring them back into covenant. That's why our Messiah has come, our Savior, our Redeemer. He has redeemed us from the curse of the law. Notice what it says here. He's redeemed us from the curse of the law. He's brought us back into compliance with the covenant. He's brought us back into compliance. There's no way he's breaking any of the covenant. If your Messiah, and like I said, now this is for adult children. This ain't for those who are weak in the faith. If your Messiah breaks covenant, then you've got the wrong Messiah. If your Redeemer is a covenant breaker, then you've got the wrong one. You got the wrong one. Because it would be, and I want to get back to where I started, it would be blasphemous for our Messiah to break covenant. There's no way he would be able to bear our transgressions if he was a transgressor himself. Isn't that what it says in Isaiah? Let's look at Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 and verse number Isaiah 53, okay, and 12. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. Numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. So there's another verse I wanted to get out of here, out of Isaiah 53. And let's look at verse number 6 and verse number 7. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and Yah hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. So it was because of the transgression of Israel, or Yasharal, that he sent our Messiah, our Redeemer, his only begotten Son. He sent him to redeem us because of our transgressions. Because our transgression. So there's no way he transgressed the covenant at all. There's no way that he transgressed the teachings of Moses. There's no way he was a transgressor. There is no way he was a transgressor. So let's go back. Let's go back to where we were. Where was it? Exodus 9 and 1. Let's go back there, because as we started this off, his people, they know his name and they're not ashamed. Why would his people know his name? Why would his people know his name? Because they were under covenant. They were under a covenant. Exodus chapter 20, verse number, let's look at verse number 2. Let's start at verse number 2. I'm going to read verse number 2, and then I want to go to Deuteronomy. He says, I, Yah, thy Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. There's not supposed to be any other gods before him. This is a part of that covenant that they entered into. Now, did they keep this part of the covenant? No, they did not. In fact, it was less than 40 days, and they had already made a molten calf and bowed to that calf. How did they bow to the calf? Because they said, this, or these, actually they said, these be the gods that brought us what? Out of Egypt. That's what they said. Can you imagine that? How he brought them out with such a mighty hand, and then they would give homage and honor to a molten calf and bow down and say, these be the gods that brought us out of Egypt? What a slap in the face. I mean, that is, no wonder his anger was heated so high. Oh, no wonder his anger was heated so high. Um, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, they in chapter 20 here, he's telling them, he's giving them, letting them know what they're to do, and then he ratifies it in 24, in chapter 24. Uh, what does it say in chapter 18? I'm not quite sure. Uh, yeah, the marriage ceremony was actually in 24. 24. Exodus 24, when he had the marriage ceremony where it was ratified by blood, they sat down, they ate with him. Yeah, that was in the 24th chapter. That's when it went into effect. But then after that, maybe it's the 28th chapter, somewhere around there, is where they actually made the molten calf, while Moses was up in the mount. And thinking of that, because I was thinking about this the other day, because Moses had, and I've counted at least 6 ascents up into the mount. Now, a lot of times in Sunday school, they'll tell you he went up there twice. That's not true. Moses didn't go up into Mount Sinai 2 times. He went up in there at least 6 times, maybe 7, but I know he went up there at least 6 times into the mount to meet the Most High. So it wasn't just 2 times he went up there. So I'm looking at that ascent of Moshe going up. And I'm just going to put this out there, and you guys can study it yourself, because we got Bible scholars here. We got some that's been walking with them for a long time. You should know your book. You should, by the Spirit that guides you into all truth, you should know your book. We say that Christ has how many descents? And when I say descents, how many times has he come? The first coming was when? When he's born. The second coming is when he comes back, his second coming, right? So that's 2 descents, right? So if he only has 2 descents, and if you hold true to that position, no, he's only got 2 descents, then when he rose from the dead, he did not ascend up until 40 days. Because if you say he has 2 descents, then you're saying that he came first in flesh, then he rose from the dead, he went back up to heaven, then he came back for 40 days, then he went up again, then he's coming back again. That's 3 descents. I was thinking about that the other day. That would be 3 descents, unless, of course, if I hold true to 2 descents, where he's only coming back the second time, that's it. If I want to hold true to that position, then when he rose from the dead as the first fruit, then he did not ascend up until after 40 days. He did not descend up. Why are you saying all that? Because it brings in a different perspective to what he told Mary, that I have not ascended unto my Father yet. So that, how many times did he ascend? How many times did he descend? That's just a study for you, something that you could think about sometime. I read something the other day, and this is, I like what I read. This I have a book up there in my office, as I was saying, and it's dealing with ancient Eastern religions and practices and culture and things like that, because that's where our Bible comes from. Our Holy Scripture comes from an ancient Eastern nation. That's where it comes from. When you look at the origin of Israel, and you go all the way back even to Moses, and how he wrote the book of Genesis. He's the author of the book of Genesis. What the Most High must have gave him to write, and you start to understand, the geographical location of them, all the other nations around them that had their gods, their gods, and their idols and everything. Israel was born in the midst of all these heathen nations. And even when you look at when Abraham, who after the slaughter of the kings, who did Abraham meet? Melchizedek, that's who he met. And it was customary. Some of the customary practices of the ancient Eastern, nations and stuff, these nations practiced things before Israel even became a nation, before they even came a nation. Abraham had known of certain customs and practices before Israel was even a nation. Jacob and Isaac and all of them, even the ones that came before them, Noah and then his sons and Enoch that came before Noah, and what their language and their customs and their practices was not English, nor was it a nation that spoke English with English customs and practices. So if we're viewing the book and the writings of an ancient Eastern nation and culture, if we're viewing that through the lens and our understanding of English linguistics, did I say that right? Linguistics, then you're actually going to bring into it your own suppositions. Through your language and your culture, you bring that into the Bible. We actually bring into the Bible our English custom and practices. Why? Because that's all we know. So when we look at the Bible and we start to read the Bible, we're viewing it through the lens of an English culture and English language and English practices. So a lot of our positions on this book comes from our culture. So I got this book up in my house, like I said, but listen to what he said. The Bible is best understood when read within its linguistic, historical, and cultural ancient Near Eastern background. Without that approach, the modern reader is left to interpret the text based on contemporary dogmatic presuppositions. So if I don't take into account the language and the culture in which this book is written, and I only read it through my dogmatic understanding of the scripts, then I'm going to bring into it my own positions before I even understand the writings of it, or I can interpret the writings of it. I will interpret the writings of this book through my language and my culture. And that's how it's been given to us. That's why when we look at capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, we're not looking at it through the lens of the ancient Eastern culture and linguistics. We're looking at it through the lens of a European construct, English language. That's how we look at it. That's why you can ask some people and tell them, what is the name of the Most High in the Old Testament? And they'll tell you it's Lord. But if you understood the culture and the language that it comes from and their practices, you would understand that that is blasphemous. But we don't see it like that. because we have our presuppositions. We're taught in school as children growing up, even in school, that there's a higher power called God. We're taught that in school. We're taught that in Sunday school. Our understanding, everybody that's sitting here now, and probably everybody that's viewing online, your understanding of this book and this writing has presuppositions because you come to it with an English background and an English language and English customs and practices. We can't help. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody. I'm not here to harm anybody. Don't get me wrong. This is to educate and to give you an understanding. We can't help that. I can't help that because that's what I know. So I come to this book on what I know. That's why there's certain dogma that's given to us so that as soon as we open up the book, we're teaching and preaching from the dogma that was given unto us. Our interpretation of this book comes from a language and a culture to who it was not given to. So I can't help myself. I can't help. There's a lot of things we say, and please hear me. Like I said, Shabbat classes is not for the faint of heart. Let's go to, I like what Habakkuk, I don't even know if I pronounced that right. Habakkuk. And in Habakkuk, chapter, because it must be chapter 2, because he says the just is going to live by his faith. Where's that at? It's in Habakkuk. I was reading it. It's in Habakkuk. Is it in chapter 1 or chapter 2? Because it says, it's in chapter 2. Listen to what he says. In chapter 2, Habakkuk 2, I'm going to read verse 2, 3, and 4. And this is to kind of help those who are maybe a little weak or get a little offended. If you're offended by what I just said about the ancient Eastern culture and practices and linguistics, if you're offended by that, then let me kind of give you, help you out here a little bit. Because I'm not here to offend. I'm not here to damage anyone. I'm here to teach and to inform. We don't have to go there, but I'm going to say this. Jeremiah 3:15 says, I will give you shepherds according to my heart, that is to feed you with knowledge and understanding. So that's what a shepherd does. A shepherd feeds with knowledge and understanding. A shepherd doesn't beat you. A shepherd doesn't whoop you. A shepherd doesn't beat your brow and make you feel less than, who you are. A shepherd is somebody that guards over the flock. He or she has a heart of compassion to see the baby sheep, the lambs to grow into sheep, and the sheep into rams. I mean, that's what the shepherd wants. He's not trying to, a shepherd doesn't kill his flock. You know what he does? He'll take his flock to the shearer, and he'll take all that excess coat off of them. And then what does the sheep do? They grow more. They grow more. And so he knows how to feed the flock. So that's why I'm here. So I want to, if so far in this class you were a little bit heated in the collar, I don't know why he's saying that. He don't know. Let me help you out. And Yah answered him. Is everybody here? And Yah answered him and said, write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, which means it might take some time, he says, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him. But what is the just going to do? But the just shall live by his faith. So the vision is supposed to be made very plain so that when you read it, you know how to run, because he even tells us to run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, looking unto our Messiah, looking unto our King, who is the author and the finisher of what? Our faith. So keep the faith. Keep the faith, stay strong. The just shall live by faith. It says the vision, it will come and it's not going to lie. I don't see it like that. I don't understand it. I don't know where he's talking about. He's way out the box. Some people might be thinking he's way out the box. Just hold on. Just hold on. The vision will come. Just wait for it. It'll come. Don't get lifted up in your own heart, because he hates a proud, look, somebody who's proud. Don't get lifted up. But it's going to come. The vision will come. Right now, you live by your faith. You got that faith in you, you live by the faith, because those who are just are going to live by their faith. So I just want to throw that in there to keep you encouraged. So back to let's go to Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, and let's look at verse number 4. This is the Holy Shema, which is the first commandment. This is the Holy Shema, which is the first commandment. He says, "Hear, O Israel, Yah, our Elohim, is one Yah. Out of all the nations around them," when you go back to the origin or the birth of a nation, even when he called Abraham out from his father's house, was his father's house idolaters? He called them out of idolaters. He called them out of idolatry. Get out from among them. Get out from your father's house. I'm going to make of you a great nation, and you're going to know. Abraham is going to know who he is. You're going to know. I'm going to make a covenant with you. I'm going to make practice. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to make a great nation out of you. Everywhere your foot, all your footprint, all that land, I'm going to give it unto you. That's why he wandered as a nomad for 25 years before he even had Isaac. He was nomadic. Why was he nomadic? Do you know how much ground you can cover in 25 years if you was walking? You could cover a lot of ground. He says, everywhere where you set your foot, I'm going to give that unto your seed. All that land that he could pass. It wasn't no little sliver of land on the Mediterranean. You can walk that whole land. You probably walked that in a year. He walked for 25 years. He was nomadic. He was all over. In fact, he was looking for a city whose builder and maker was the Most High, was the Elohim. So he must have told him about that city. He said, I got to find that city. And everywhere he walked, all his footprints, he said, I'm going to give it all to you. You're going to be I'm making a covenant with Abraham. Abraham's going to know who I am, and his descendant and his seed. So he says, I want Israel, I want you to know I am one. And thou shalt love Yah thy Elohim with all thy heart and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. He wants it in a place to where you are affectionate, to where you love. When he says to place it in the heart, he wants you to love. He wants you to love him. I want you to love me with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. You have to know who I am. That was the covenant that he had gave Abraham, and then he reiterated and gave that covenant unto Israel as a nation. Why Israel as a nation? Because Israel was going to be his witness, amongst all these other nations. You're going to be my nation to witness for me that I am one. I'm not two, I'm not three, I don't have four heads, I don't have, there's only one, and you're only going to serve one. That's all that you're going to serve. I don't want you, don't even consider. In fact, Exodus 23 and verse 13. Exodus 23 and 13. He says, and in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name or the shem of other gods. Don't even make a mention of their names. Neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. For them to utter any name of any other god was forbidden. It was forbidden to make the mention of Baal. It was forbidden to make mention of Chemosh. It was forbidden to make mention of those Molech. All those other, he says, I don't even want it to come out of your mouth. He doesn't. We just went through a season. He don't even, any church that still uses EASTER and the practices of it are not in his body. I don't care, you put any name on it. Call them what you want to call them. Call them Catholic, call them Methodist, call them Episcopalian, call them Lutheran, call them Baptist, call them Church of God in Christ, call them Pentecostal, call them Apostolic. I don't care what you call them. If they're doing that practice of EASTER, they are not in the body. I don't care how often they holler and sing and shout. There's a what has happened is because they've taken their culture and their language and they've interpreted this book with presuppositions. People learn about paganism in school and in churches as a child as they come up. So as they speak that language, they've already have a preposition. You have some people that already have a position on things of this book before they even open up the book and read. Where does that come from? It comes from our culture. It comes from this culture. So even me in my study, I have to be careful that I don't bring in my culture when I'm trying to understand this book. I have to be careful. No church can talk about eschatology or things to come. Let's go back to John 16:13. Let's go back to John 16:13. And let's read that. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, the Ruach of truth is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, shall he speak, and he will show you things to come, which is eschatology. So if you're going to speak of things to come, you're talking about eschatology. So if I'm going to speak eschatology or things to come, it has to be done through the Spirit of truth. You're not going to be able to speak of things to come or eschatology if you don't have the Spirit of truth or know what truth is. Notice now, he says the Spirit of truth is going to guide you into all truth. You have to be guided into all truth. Then it's going to show you things to come. If you don't know truth, you can't speak of things to come. We have predetermined positions when we go and read even the language of Christ, the teachings of Christ, the gospels of Christ. We have presuppositions before we even start to teach them. We have presuppositions. Your walk with him, the Spirit should be guiding you into all truth, which means he's opening up your understanding. You don't know it all when you first get born. When you start your journey with him, you don't know it all. If somebody looks at this and says, well, as soon as they got the Ruach, they had all truth and they knew things to come. That is not true. You're taking your presupposition through your culture and your language, and you've inserted that into this book to make you think soon as you have been born of the Ruach, you got it all. When our Messiah said, I want you to take my yoke upon you, and I want you to learn of me. That learning of him is that guiding into all truth. You have many people standing up in pulpits today, tomorrow, all next week that don't have all truth. And some of them have already entered into the interpretation of this book with presuppositions. They've already done it. Even, those who keep the Shabbat, those who keep the Sabbath and keep it holy and sanctified, know that day is sanctified. Those who understand that and keep that are blessed. They are blessed because that is part of the covenant. It's not the whole covenant, but it's part of the covenant. It's combined with other things, but that is a part of the covenant. So those who keep it are blessed. They are blessed. Showing you things to come. Let's go to Genesis chapter 10 and verse number 2. I'm going to read Genesis 10, 2, and 3. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavin, Tubal, Meshach, Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Ripha, Togarmah. These are the sons of Gomer. In verse number 3, the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz's grandfather is Japheth or Japheth. Japheth's grandson is Ashkenaz. So who is Japheth? Japheth is the third son of Ham. Japheth is not Shem. Japheth is Shem's brother. You have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So somebody who is Ashkenaz comes from the son of Japheth. An Ashkenaz is not Shem. So if I speak against the Ashkenazis, I'm not being anti-Shemite or whatever they call it. What do they call it? Anti-Shemite? Huh? Anti-Semite. So by me saying this, Ashkenazis are not even of Shem. So how could you say something against the Ashkenazis and then be considered anti-Semitic? That's because you're introduced to this book and you have presuppositions. Because the Spirit of Truth will tell you Ashkenazi Jews are not of the son of Shem. They're the son of Japheth. That's the Spirit of Truth that'll tell you that. So you got Ashkenazi Jews. And over there right now, you got Ashkenazi Jews. You know who else they have over there now? They call themselves. So anybody calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews, automatic are not of the sons of Shem. Automatic. The book says it. Your Spirit of Truth should be able to guide you into that. So anybody that's in a pulpit that stands up and says those Ashkenazi Jews are the chosen people of the Most High are in error. They're in error according to the Holy Scripture. Okay, in Second Kings, bear with me, 2 Kings 17, 2 Kings 17, verse 24. And do we have, is there any coffee in the house? Any coffee in the house? And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharim. That Sepharim, that is where you get the Sephardic Jews. The Sephardic Jews, or the Sephardics, were placed in the land. They were placed in there. They were placed in there by the king of Assyria. It's right there in your book. So people who say, I'm a Sephardic Jew, if they say they're a Sephardic Jew, they're not the descendants of Shem. They're not a Shemite. It's right there in the book. Any preacher or teacher that stands up in the pulpit and says that those Sephardic Jews that are over there are the people of the Most High, the chosen people of the Most High, they speak that in error. The Spirit of Truth has not told them that. Because if the Spirit of Truth will guide you into all truth, it'll take you into the Scripture and show you Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardic Jews are not his people. Are not his people. Now, let's go to the next group I want to show you. We have to go to Leviticus chapter, let's look at Leviticus, I think it's chapter 11. They get that from where? Oh, they get that from the interpretation of their culture and their nation that they come from. So you look at a nation, you look at their language, you look at their culture. And so in that culture and that language, that's where they get the understanding that they are the children of the Most High. They automatically get it. Because all of these different countries and these languages, that's what they teach. It's not the Bible teaching. There's things, sister, there's things that we learn through school, through our educational institution. There's things that we learn that is not of the spirit of truth. And so what they teach us, it gets down in us. These children that are here, unless we guide them into all truth, they're going to come up believing, when they're an adult male, they're going to come up believing that they're the children of the Most High. Unless they're instructed and guided by the spirit of truth that brings them into truth. You can't believe everything you hear. I'm learning that more and more. I can't believe everything I hear. I have to research it and study it. And we can research everything today. There's no subject that you can't research today. Because what I'm doing some study on now, I'm doing a study on even what the Judea, the mix of Judea at the time of our Messiah, the mix of Judea, because there was a mixed group of people that was there in Judea at his life. You had the Greek Empire that had just fallen and was being broken up. The Roman Empire came in about 200 years before our Messiah, before Christ was born. So you had but the Greek Empire still had a large influence. Even when the Roman Empire started up, the Roman Empire spoke Latin. But what was the dominant language at the time of our Messiah? It was Greek. The Greek was a dominant language. He spoke Hebrew. He spoke, the home Hebrew is what he spoke. But Greek had such a strong influence that the Septuagint, which was 200 to 300 years before our Messiah, the Septuagint was published and was accepted. Koine Greek was a language that was accepted at that time. So you had some Israelites that spoke Greek, and they were called Hellenists, and then you had the Israelites that spoke Hebrew. So you had a mixed bag there. So how could those Israelites that spoke Greek, how could that be such a dominant language at the time, even when you had our Messiah who spoke Hebrew? Because of the influence of that third beast before the Roman Empire came in. Now, when the Roman Empire came in, and after our Messiah's death, and the Roman Empire really rose to the power, they seen a different strategy. At first, they had a military strategy, and everybody had to speak Latin. But then after that military strategy, they adopted a different strategy. I wonder if anybody knows what that strategy is. That last beast adopted a different strategy. It was first military, but then when they wanted to conquer, I'll just drop a few things that you guys can do a little study yourself. You can do a little study yourself. But first you have to go back to pontiffs. You have to go back to pontiffs, which is Ponifex or Pontifex, pontiffs. You have to go back and look at that because that predates Christ. And then you have to look at the Pontifex Maximus. What was a Pontifex? What was a Pontifex Maximus? Why does all that? That comes into, you have to understand that if you want to see this last beast. Because if you don't know that, if you don't have an understanding of that, you're not going to understand this last beast and the warfare that we have today. There's some resemblance to that? Yes, it is. You're right. It's understanding the clashes of cultures in that day will help you understand what's going on today. And you can see the development. You can see how this beast is exposed when you understand the the mixing of the cultures and the languages. Even on his cross, what was written on his cross? What languages was it written in his cross on the cross? Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take this. Hebrew, Greek, and Latin was the language and the dominant cultures of that day. You had Judea, which was the Hebrew culture, the southern kingdom. You had the Greek culture and Koine Greek language that was fading out, hadn't faded out completely, but that was fading out. Then you had the Roman culture coming in and the Latin. So you had a clash there. Even the calendar we're on is the Greco-Roman calendar. We're not even on the Hebrew calendar. We're on the Greco-Roman calendar. They reset the times. Our year starts when you have the equinox, where you have the centering of it's called the equinox, where you kind of have like 12 hours of the day and 12 hours of the night. It's the equinox. That's when we start our year. That's when he says this is a new year to you, the month of Abib. And he marks it by coming out of Egypt. That was a new year for the Hebrews. But the other nations had their own calendar, their own new year. So what is the dominant calendar? You got the Chinese calendar. You still have the Hebrew calendar. You got other calendar. But what calendar does the world recognize? The Greco-Roman calendar. They recognize it around the world. So you still have that fourth beast, and he says it was broken, partly clay, partly iron. You had the mixing together. You still have that Greco-Roman, that last beast that is still here today, that has changed times and has changed laws. And they're still tampering with a lot of things. They're tampering now. They're tampering with our DNA. They've grown in knowledge. They've got knowledge now, and now they're tampering with our DNA. But anyway, so you had these different cultures and the clashes of these cultures that you have to understand if you want to expose or reveal what this beast is in this day. Because when they know they can't have the military power to conquer the world, they have another means of conquering the world. And they've put that into action before any of us was born. They put it into action. So looking at, I said the pontiffs, then you have to look at what a papal bull is, Papal, bull, Bull. And then you got to look up dum diversus, what that papal bull represents, and then the Romanus papal bull and what that represented. Then there's just a lot of history to look at, because that sets the pace, that puts into order. When you look at the dum diversus, that papal bull puts in order everything that we have today when it comes to religion. So let that sink in. Jesus said when his gospel reaches every nation, that's when he's returning, right? Yeah, but notice what he says. It's got to be his gospel. Because when you look at dum diversus and Romanus, when you look at those papal bulls, that went worldwide. Look at what year it went worldwide. And then has that teaching infiltrated the whole world, every nation? And pretty much it has. So our Messiah should have come by now. If Jesus said, when this gospel is preached to every nation, that's when I'm coming, and you look at dum diversus and Romanus, then he should have come by now. The only thing is Dum Diversus and Romanus was not the gospel that he was talking about that had to be preached to every nation. That's not his gospel. That's why we're still here. That's why we're still waiting for him. Okay, so I want to bring out the, are you looking some of that up? Okay, because it's hard to, you got to do some digging. They hid some stuff. There's some stuff that they hid that you got to really search for because I've been digging, trying to find different books and online, just trying to read and get some stuff. I'm digging. And there's some things I found and some other things that, when they place $60,000 on a book, $30,000 on a book, that's because there's something in that book they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. That's why it costs so much. They don't want you to know. Start doing some research on Dum Diversus. You'll find out. Man, I can't. What are you talking about, Dum Diversus? Where is that? How did you find that? Because I went all the way back to pontiffs and the origin of that and what that represents. And then the authority that they had. The authority of the pontiffs, they could write religious law. What they wrote was considered religious law. That was over this book. No. Yeah, that's how they changed. Because they said they have coming from the pontiffs, whatever they say is law. Whatever they say is law. I don't care what the book says. What we say is law. So actually, the pontiffs has given another Christ. That's what I'm finding. They've given us another Christ. They've given us another. So, but anyway, let me go back to. You had the Sephardic Jews. You had the Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, so let's go to Leviticus chapter 11, verse number 7. Leviticus 11, verse number 7. Notice what it says. And the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Now, let's go into the Hebrew text and find out what that swine is, where it says, and the swine. In the Hebrew text, it's H2386. H2386. In the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon Bible, it's number 2153 in parentheses B. Swine, okay, it's a boar. Let's look at how it's pronounced. You might not be able to pronounce it there in the Hebrew because the Hebrew goes from right to left. So unless you know how to read Hebrew, Hazar. Okay, you go down here, it gives you a little better understanding of how to pronounce it. Khazar or Khazir. So to say swine in Hebrew is to say Khazir, Khazar. Khazar. A Khazar is considered a swine in Hebrew. If I say Khazar in Hebrew, I'm talking about a swine. So there was a nation of people called the Khazarians. The Khazarian nation converted over to Judaism in the 5th and 6th century, converted over to Judaism as a nation. They were considered Khazars. That's what they're called, Khazars. It's very profound. It shines as bright as the noonday sun when he opens your understanding. Let me give you another, let's throw something else on here. No, Khazar, the Khazarians. Because over there in the land now you have Khazarian Jews. You got Khazarian Jews, you got Sephardic Jews, and you got Ashkenazi Jews. Not one of them can trace their lineage back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But to the world looks at them as the chosen people of the Most High. The world looks at them as the most favorite nation. The world looks at them that if we want to be blessed, what do we have to do? Bless them. That's how the world looks at it. Where do we get that teaching from? Because the spirit of truth, when you look at the spirit of truth, it'll guide you in the truth. It'll bring out the scriptures and the word to where you see plainly who they are. That's the spirit of truth. Because the spirit of truth has to show you things to come. Didn't we read that? We read that. The spirit of truth shows you things to come. Well, it's not going to show you things to come if you're in the dark of who Israel is. If you don't know who Israel is, then you cannot see things to come. That's why people in the church cannot teach eschatology, because people in the church believe that the Ashkenazi, the Sephardim, and the Khazars are the chosen people of the Most High. And so let's follow that nation and let's see what happens to that nation, because as soon as that nation wakes up, then the Messiah is going to come. Well, for one thing, they're not the chosen people. Thank you. Ashkenazi, Sephardim, and Khazars are not the chosen people. So you can't speak eschatology if you see them as a chosen people. So every church that gets up and you put your name on them, I don't care what you call them, put your name on them. Every church that gets up and points to the people over there saying that they are the chosen people of the Most High, that is not the spirit of truth that is speaking. That's not the spirit of truth. So then their interpretation of this book is in error. Their interpretation of eschatology is in error, because they can't show me things to come if they don't have the spirit of truth. You can't show me things to come if you don't have the spirit of truth. Now, let's look at Matthew chapter 7 and verse number 6. Matthew 7, verse number 6. He says, "Give not that which is holy unto dogs, neither cast ye your pearls," and he didn't speak English, and in Hebrew, swine is kazar. So he says, don't cast your pearls before kazars. You don't do that. You don't give what's most holy unto dogs, and you don't cast your pearls before kazars. What will they do? If I'm constantly looking to those kazars as his people and I'm trying to persuade them on who I am, he says, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. You know what rend is? Rend is to rip you to pieces. They will turn on you, they'll trample their feet over you, and they'll rend you to pieces. That's why he says you don't give them anything that's holy. You don't give not that which is holy unto dogs. Now we got to see who the dogs are. Neither cast ye your pearls before swine. So Matthew 15 and verse, let's go down to Matthew 15, verse number 21. We'll start there so we can see the dogs. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan, who was a Canaanite. So a Canaanite, and this is why. So when people think that he chose, that I got to be careful. I drink my coffee. There was a disciple that we call Simon, and they said he's Simon the Canaanite. You have to be careful, because all of the disciples that he chose were of Judea. They were of the tribe of Judah, all of them. even Judas or Judah, which betrayed him, was of the tribe of Judah. The only one of his disciples or apostles that was born out of due season, that was not of the tribe of Judah, was Paul. And Paul let you know, I come from Benjamin. Because in that time you had Judea and Benjamin. So when they say Simon the Canaanite, he's actually being mislabeled. He came out of Canaan and the coast of Canaan, but he was not a Canaanite. How can you say that? How can you say he was not a Canaanite? Because what it says here. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, O Adonai, son of Daud. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. He wouldn't even answer her a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered, says, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yasharal. Verse number 25. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Adon, help me. But he answered and said, listen, it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast to dogs. So there's no way Simon the Canaanite was actually a Canaanite. He might have came out of the coast of Canaan, but he was of the tribe of Judah because Canaanites were dogs. They were dogs. So he said, I'm not taking the children's bread and cast it to dogs because the Canaanites are dogs. He said in the 7th chapter, we read it, he says, give not your pearls, what did he say? Unto swine, and your holy things unto dogs. That's what he said. Because the Canaanites were considered, and the Canaanites were the sons of Ham. They were the sons of Ham. And they were considered dogs. And so he says, give not, what does it say in Matthew 7 and 6 again? Give not that which is holy unto the dogs. Neither cast ye your pearls before swine. So that's why he says, it's not good to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. I'm not going, the Canaanite nation, the Canaanites were considered dogs. Sons of Ham were considered dogs unto him. The Khazars were considered swine unto him. He says, because they're going to trample it on their feet. They're going to mistreat you, and they're going to turn on you, and then they're going to rend you to pieces. So really, when you look at Judah and the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're the most hated people on earth today. The most hated people on earth today are the descendants of Judah. They're the most hated people on the earth today. Yes.
See, when we hear that him calling her a dog, we automatically think a four-legged dog. But she knew, that's why she didn't get all offended. She knew what he was referring to.
Right. She knew, because what does she said in verse number 27? Okay, let's look at 15, 26, and then 27. But he answered and said, it is not meet. This is Matthew 15, 26, and then 27. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast to dogs. And she said, truth. That is so true. She says, yes, it's true. Yet dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. So she knew she was on the outside of Israel. She knew she was not a part of the commonwealth. Even when we read in Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, he says, you were aliens to the covenant of promise. You were outside of the commonwealth. He says you were in the world without hope and without the Elohim. But what made them not? It was the blood. It was his blood that brought. But he said, first, I got to give it to the children first, because I come to the lost sheep of Israel. In time, now wait for it, like he says, wait for it. In time, then it's going to go to, because he had his disciples and one born out of due season out of the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, which was going to give it to everybody else. But first, we're going to the lost sheep of the house of Yasharal. They get it first. The one that's born out of due season, who was not of the tribe of Judah, who was a Benjamite, who knew Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. He knew all those languages. He was going to take the children's bread, like she said here, it comes from the master's table. That's how we get part of it. And that's how they got part of it. That's how they got the children's bread. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, notice now, great is thy faith. And that's why he said the just is going to live by faith. He said, keep your faith. He says, wait for the vision. Wait for the revelation. Wait for it the understanding. Wait for it to come. He says it might tarry, but it's coming. You just wait on it. But live by your faith. The faith that you have today, you live by that faith until that vision, that revelation, that understanding, until it comes. You live by your faith. Well, this is my faith. This is what I have. This is what I already know. You live by that faith until that revelation comes. Like he says here, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. Notice now, there was no high-spirited prayer meeting. It wasn't no folks rolling around, snotting at the nose, foaming at the mouth. They weren't doing backflips and jumping up off the wall and doing karate kicks. They wasn't doing none of that. This woman, her faith was so strong. He said that it's great. He knew the faith that she had. She must have heard something about him because she said, truth, Adon, truth. I know that I'm a dog and that you were given to Israel. I know that. But we could eat off of the master's table. Just let it fall on us. And her faith, notice now, he says, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. It was the faith that she had in the Messiah that made her daughter whole and free of that devil. It was her faith, because our presupposition, when we come to read this book and interpret this book, our presupposition is it has to be a highly spiritual meeting. And folks got to be arms up in the air, screaming and shouting and hollering. And all of that emotionalism ushers in the spirit, and the spirit of faith, the spirit of healing, the spirit of deliverance. That didn't happen here. It didn't happen here. In fact, the woman that had the issue of blood for 12 years, all she did was touch the hem of his garment, and she was made whole. Where's that at? Because he said, it is your faith that have made you whole. That's what he told the woman that had the issue of 12 blood. He said it was the issue of blood for 12 years. He said it was your faith that made you whole. So we should be able to have power through the faith that we have in him. That's what makes me who I am, is the faith that I have in him. He knows that we are emotional creatures. He knows that. And you have a lot of people that's how they get their results, is through their emotions. Okay, but as long as you know, it doesn't take all those emotions to have faith. Huh? Yep. He honors it if your faith is there. he honors it because even with Mary Magdalene, and she broke that alabaster box, and it said that even her tears, so that's an emotion. I mean, it was her tears. She washed his feet. Then she took her hair and used her hair as a towel and dried his feet. That's humility. That's humility. Where can you imagine the emotion? You know how many tears that was? That's a lot of tears to wash his feet and then to dry it with her hair. So he honored that. He says, wherever this gospel is preached, you're gonna hear about that. You're gonna hear about that. So he does honor that because he knows we're emotional creatures. But at the same time, we got some people who aren't as emotional as others, and we can't judge them. I ain't never seen them shout. They might be full. They might have so much faith. Hey, I got faith with him. You don't have to see me shout. I got faith. You know, a tree is known by the fruit it bears. So, but most of us, because of the crisis in our lives and the things that we experience, that's how we express ourselves. You know, you have some people that experience so much heartache in their life. That's what they do. They break down and cry. They come into the services. They can't help but express their emotion because that's how they relate through their life experiences. But, you know, if I'm not, you know, foaming at the mouth and snotting at the nose at the altar, don't mean I don't have no faith and I can't get in touch with them. I can still get in touch with him and see the power of the faith that I have in my life. Because he said, if you have the faith the size of a grain of a mustard seed, which is pure faith, if you have that type of faith, you'll be able to move mountains. Be able to move mountains. Just move them out of your way. And believe me, we got mountains in our lives. We got some mountains that we think is insurmountable. I can't get up over this mountain. This is too great for me. I've tried to scale it, and I can't. So, you know, with that pure faith, you can just move it out of the way. You won't destroy it. You just move it out of the way. Yes. Okay. Luke, where's that? Luke 8:43. Thank you. Luke 8:43, and a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came unto him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood staunched, or it dried up. And Jesus said, who touched me? When all denied, Peter and they that were with him, Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, who touched me? And Jesus says, somebody have touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me. So that virtue was his ability to heal. He could touch people who were maimed and they could walk. He could, you know, people who had absent of limbs, he could touch them and they had limbs. He could take some mud, spittle in some mud, and put eyes in somebody's head, in their socket. I mean, so that was a virtue that was in him. So he felt it go out. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling, falling down before him. She declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said unto her, daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. It's the power of faith. But you got to have faith in him. Notice, she had heard about somebody that was healing. She had heard how the multitude had amassed around him. She says, all I got to do is I know from what I heard, I know. So, and you have a lot of people who come into church, and they've heard already. So they know by what they've heard, I know I can be delivered. I know I can be delivered from sin. I've heard about the power of the Christ, of the Mashiach. I've heard about it. So I know all I got to do is touch the hem of his garment. That's all I got to do. I know it's going to happen. But so you have those who cry out to him, because even in the prophet Ezekiel, he says, call for what? The wailing women. He says, call for the wailing women. Have them cry out unto me. So the wailing women were women that could cry out, that could reach that throne. So you have that in the mix. So you got that to consider. But it's all in here. You know, we just can't sit in judgment. I can't sit in judgment and say somebody who's emotional and crying out to him, and that's how they reach him. I can't say that it doesn't take that. Nor can I say that somebody who doesn't do all of that, you can't reach them because you're not. See what I'm saying? I mean, you know, so you have to take all of that into consideration, because you have some that are more emotional than others. What if you got somebody that's not emotional? Does that mean they can't get a hold of him because they're not emotional? And then you have those who are very emotional because of the conflict of life and their personal life experiences, and they're really emotional. It might take that, like Sister Lorraine said, it might take that to reach them. And so you can't judge that person like you just can't judge the other one. You know, if that's what it takes to reach them, then that's your experience. That's how you reach them. But we have to be careful when we sit in judgment on our brothers and sisters. You got to really be careful when you do that, because he tells us, judge not that ye be not judged. Then he says in John 7:24, he says, judge not according to appearance, but judge what? Righteous judgment. So I can't judge according to appearance, you know. So we have it on both sides, and there's just got to be that unity and that understanding. You know, sometimes, sometimes for me, it might take, sometimes I've shed tears. I've cried real tears. That's how I reached the throne. But then there's sometimes I don't have time to cry tears. I might have to just speak his name. I might have to say something real quick and be able to reach him and see that power, you know, and have it demonstrated in my life. So it takes all of that. It takes all of that. We talked about the Khazarian Jews. We talked about the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews. And so we can see in Scripture, and we located some dogs, you know, and so we see that in Scripture, in our holy script. That's why when I come to this book, I can't come with presuppositions. I've got to be able to understand it in the language and the culture in which it was written. Then my understanding gets a little deeper, a little broader, and I get enlightenment to where I can see. Now, the commandments that were given, he says in, this is Deuteronomy 5 and verse number 7, which is the same thing we see in Exodus chapter 20. We pretty much got the same thing there. Now, I seen the Pontific's 10 commandments, which is different from the scriptural 10 commandments. But again, the Pontifics say that they have the authority to rewrite Holy Script. That's what the Pontifics is. They have the authority to do that. They speak as a God. And they were doing this before our Messiah came. That's why our Messiah says, all that come before me are thieves and robbers. Everybody that came before. So when you look at, when you consider the Roman Catholic Church, the origins of that predates Christ. When you study the Pontifex, it predates Christ. Later on, after Christ, after our Messiah died and rose again, and the gospel, the news of him spread throughout Judea, and then Paul took it up towards Turkey, the Asia Minor, that's where Paul took it. The Roman Empire had already been in Judea, so when they seen this, they looked at that as something that they could harness and put in their school of prophets. Hear me now. That they could put in their school of prophets, which is the Pontifex. So they took our Messiah and put him in their school of prophets and rewrote things. That's why you could not even get any writings on this sacred book unless you got or understood Greek, and then they took out the Greek writings. You could hardly find the Septuagint. The only thing that you could get was the Latin and the Latin Vulgate, which is what Eusebius, who they changed his name to Jerome. So if you ever do any study on Eusebius and then they changed his name to Jerome, they're talking about the same person. But Eusebius is who wrote the Latin Vulgate. Do you know for about 1,400 years, there was no writings on this sacred book outside of Latin. And it was restricted to a certain group of priests in a certain religion, and that's all you would get. But I want to tell you that what I just said is the history going on that side. There is another history, but we don't hear about that history, and it's hard to find that history because the last beast is worldwide, and so they've stamped out. Let's go to Acts and the 8th chapter. And the angel of Yah spake unto Philip. Acts 8 and 26. I'm going to start there. Acts 8 and 26. And the angel of Yah spake unto Philip, saying, Arise and go toward the south unto the way that goeth down from Jerusalem unto Gaza, which is desert. And he arose, this is Philip, and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority, unto Candace, queen of the Ethiopians. Now, a lot of people think that he is a Ethiopian because he comes from Ethiopia, and now he was a eunuch of great authority, which means they probably castrated him and put him up over the house, and because what they did back in those days to understand ancient Eastern culture and practices, if a king wanted a guard over his harem or over his certain people in his house and everything like that, he would find a very strong, very capable of man, a warrior most likely, but will castrate him so that he would not, there would be no desire. You can't mess with my harem because you ain't got nothing, So that's what they would do, but they were great warriors. They were men. A lot of times they were intelligent. When nations came in to conquer you, they wanted the cream of the crop. They didn't get the low people, peasants and stuff. They wanted the best. And so he was not an Ethiopian, as we see, as we read on. he was not an Ethiopian because of why he was going to Jerusalem, which lets you know he was not an Ethiopian, even though he came from Ethiopia. And we should be able to see that in the second chapter of Acts, because in the second chapter of Acts, which was the feast of Shavuot, and they came from where? All nations. And it lists all those different nations, but they were not Cretians, they were not Arabians, they were not, even though they came from those countries, they were Israelites, but they came to Jerusalem for the feast. Even though they were recognized from those nations as those people, they were Israelite seed, but they came out of those nations and they came for the feast of Shavuot. So here you have, and he arose, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge over all her treasure, and had come to Jerusalem for to worship, was returning. So he had went to Jerusalem for one of the feasts. You'd have to go into this a little further and find out which feast he went to Jerusalem for. But listen, he was returning, sitting in his chariot, read Isaiah the prophet. So here he is reading Isaiah the prophet, and probably the 53rd chapter. Yeah, probably the 53rd chapter is what he was reading. So now remember what Christ had called Canaan. Okay, he was a dog. So Canaan came from Ham. So who else came from Ham? You had Mizraim, which is Egypt. You had Cush, which is the Ethiopians. You had Phut, which is the Libyans, and then you had Canaan, which you had all the ites, the Canaanites. You had all the ites. All the ites came from Canaan. But he said all of them were dogs. That's why he was not a dog, as we classify the dogs, because they were not to give the gospel to the dog. The ones who went to the other nation was Paul. That had to come through Paul. And Paul had not been struck down on the road to Damascus yet. So it was Paul, apostle born out of due season, that was giving it to all these other nations. So he was not a dog. So even though he was in her authority, he was an Israelite that came from Ethiopia. And that's why the gospel was given unto him. Then the Spirit said unto Philip, go near and join thyself to his chariot. And Philip ran thither to him and heard him read the prophet Isaiah and said, understandest what thou readest? And he said, how can I, except some man should guide me? Notice now, and he desired Philip that he would come up and sit with him. And the place of the scripture which he read was this: he was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and like a lamb dumb before his shears, so opened he not his mouth. And he goes on to explain, in his humiliation, his judgment was taken away. And who shall declare his generation? For his life is taken from the earth. And the eunuch answered Philip and said, I pray thee, of whom speaketh the prophet this? Of himself or some other man? So from there, that's where Philip says, let me tell you what the prophet Isaiah is speaking of. And from there, he preaches unto him the gospel of Jesus Christ from Isaiah 53. And when he preaches unto him the scripture, and then the eunuch said, see, here is water. What doth hinder me to be baptized? So somewhere in that preaching that Philip did in Isaiah 53, the eunuch understood that, hey, I've got to be baptized. I got to be baptized. So, but his understanding was not full, but he knew that there's something going on here in Isaiah 53. Now, you got to open up my understanding. Some man's got to teach me this. I got to have my understanding enlightened. And so Philip, who was full, he was one of the ones who were full of the Holy Ghost. So being full of the Holy Ghost and having the Spirit of truth, if the Spirit of truth is not guiding you into all truth like it did with Philip here, then that's not the Spirit of truth. It's not the Spirit of truth. If your Spirit of truth cannot guide you into all truth and cannot show you things to come, then that's not the Ruach. That's not the Ruach. And what did he say here in 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1? He says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of Elohim, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." So every spirit that speaketh is not of Elohim. It's not of our Father. Not every spirit. So he says, you try that spirit to see if they are of Elohim. Jesus warned us of false prophets. Not only did he warn us of false prophets, he warned us of false what? Christ with a S. So there's many. He says, I'm warning you of false Christ. And there's a false Christ that is so powerful. He says he's going to show great signs and wonders that if it's possible, that false Christ is going to deceive the very elect. And he's going to be able to deceive the very elect because he shows great signs and wonders. Because what did Paul say about the Jews? The Jews seek after a sign and the Greeks go after wisdom. He said the Jews are always looking for the sign. The Greeks are looking for wisdom, But he says, I come to you in the power of the gospel of Christ. That's what I'm coming to you at, because, people like, signs. They like to show me a sign. And it goes back to the days of Moshe because, Moshe is going to say, they're going to ask me, who are you speaking for? Who sent you? Who are you representing? Who sent you? And he said, I am that I am, or Ahia, Ashir, Ahia. Ahia, Ashar, Ahia. That's what he said. Ahia, Ashar, Ahia is what he said. But you know what that Ahia is? Because it's spoken in Genesis 1 and verse 3. That same Ahia that he said in Exodus, is that Exodus 6? Where he says, I am that I am? Is that Exodus 6? Or is that Exodus 4? Maybe it's Exodus, I think it's 4. Exodus 4, he says that. I am that I am. But the Jews always seek after a sign. The Jews, the Israelites, always seeking after a sign. That's why they have to be careful. Be careful because the Christ, the false Christ, will be able to come with great signs and wonders. So it's imperative for me to know truth and have the Spirit of truth do the revealing and the understanding of his book. Now, that first commandment, and we was reading it in Deuteronomy 5, and I think it's 7. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee graven images, any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah, thy Elohim, a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So the first one, and we see that in Deuteronomy 6:4, the Holy Shema, that first commandment of covenant. This is a covenant practice, not to have any other GODs before him. If somebody is saying that is done away with, that's not the spirit of truth, because he doesn't want any other GODs, any other, none before him. He says in Isaiah, I think it's the 46th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, he said he was the first and the last, and there is none that was before him, and there's none coming after him. So you're not going to find another, what we call Elohim. You're not going to find another. They don't exist. Now, you'll have other GODs, but they're powerless to our Elohim. They're powerless. So he says, I don't want you to have any before me. Don't even make mention of them. There's not to be anything graven, an image of anything in the likeness of heaven above or on the earth beneath. Nothing is to be made as an image that you bow down before. Nothing. There should be no image. In fact, anybody that draws a picture of him, automatically that's an image and needs to be kicked out. There's no pictures of him. So when people are carrying around a picture of him, or they have it on their wall, they have it in their office, they have an image of a man on a cross up in their assembly, in their sanctuary, and they're bowing down to it, that is idolatry. It's idolatry. He says, verse number 9 here, thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. He doesn't like that. Why? Because he's jealous. He says, I am jealous. Then he says in Deuteronomy 5:11, so do you think do we think that he has forgotten all of this type of worship? Look, I'm going to come back here, but Isaiah chapter 42 and verse number 14. Now, what's a long time to him? We don't know what a long time to him is, because he speaks in eternity from the beginning. So we don't know what's a long time to him. Some people say, well, he's not going to keep silent unto his body, his assembly for 2,000 years. He ain't going to keep silent. He would have told us. He says, I have long time holding my peace. And we don't know what a long time is. He can go quiet for 2,000 years, not say a word. And to him, that's just a couple of days. They ain't nothing to him. For us, that's like eternity. For us, I mean, if we live to be 100 years old, man, that's a long time to live to be 100 years old. To him, that's just a vapor. It just appears for a short time ago. He says, I have long time holding my peace. I have been still. I've refrained myself. I've been still. I refrained myself. He says, but now I will cry like a travailing woman. When he come, I will destroy and devour at once. You better be careful when you're looking for the day of Elohim, or the day of Yah, the day of Yahuwah, Yom of Yahuwah. When you say you want the Yom of Yahuwah, better be careful. Better be careful. Let's go to Joel. Joel chapter 2 and verse is it Joel 2? Or is it? Yeah, is that 2? Okay, all right there. Okay, and then I want to go to Amos. Amos, the 5th chapter. I think it's the 5th chapter. Okay, Joel 2, verse 1. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the Yom of Yahuwah cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Yom is day, or in the Hebrew, Yom is like daybreak. Daybreak. So Yom of Yahuwah cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Notice now, it's a Yom of darkness and of gloominess, a Yom of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There have not been ever the like, neither shall it be any more after it, to the years of many generations. So when people are asking for the day of Yom, I'll be glad when the day of Yom or Yom Elohim or Yom Yahuwah, I'll be glad when the day of the Lord comes. I'll be glad. You don't know what you're asking for. Amos, is it Amos chapter 5? Amos chapter 5. Okay, let's look at verse number 18. Amos 5 and 18. Actually, he says, now that woe, that means judgment. That's what that woe is. So, woe unto you that desire Yom of Yahuwah. Notice he says, if you desire that day, what you're desiring is judgment. Now, some of us might want judgment. I might want some judgment. I'm ready for some judgment to come on this world. I'm kind of, don't judgment and justice. Because when we go to Isaiah, he has visited the house of Judah, of Yahweh. And he has. If you haven't seen the judgment on Judah, but even from the time that they said, his blood be upon us and our children, from that time, because from that time up to 70 AD, judgment was being pronounced on the house of Judah. From 70 AD to today, judgment is being pronounced on the house of Judah. Now, some of us can escape to a certain degree, because we've got to look at things in degrees. Some of us can escape the degree of the curse, not the curse in its entirety, but we can escape the degree of the curse. Why? Because our birth in the Messiah. Because he even came to his own. He wanted them to be born of him. You have to be. That's why he was baptizing people. You got to have a new beginning. The new day is coming. You got to have a new beginning. So you have to be born again of water and spirit in order to escape some of these curses that's coming. Now, did everybody get born of the water and spirit? No. No. Even in his day, they didn't. Even after his day, everybody didn't. Even the time, he even warned them. He warned them about 70 AD. He warned them about that. That day's coming. He warned them about it. And so, has he visited the house of Judah? He has. Is he done? Not yet. But he has visited. We underestimate him, and many of us don't know him. Because the more that you learn of him, the more that you respect him, and the more that you fear him. The more that you learn of him, know him. You respect him and you fear him. He has been judging the house of Judah for almost 2 days. Mm-hmm. And he's not done yet. He's not done. So when it says judgment must begin at the house of Yah, speaking about Judah, it has started there. And it has been going on. It has. Other nations haven't experienced his judgment yet, but they will. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. And we have to be careful. Because I said this before, and I'll just say it again. We have to be careful how we approach the book if we approach it with presuppositions because of our language and our culture. And that's where a lot of us do. Because a lot of us think that they can live a certain way all their life, and then say they believe in him, and then all of a sudden they're going to be taken up to the sky boxes in the Shamaim, and then look down here and see all the judgment that's coming on these nations. And that's not, it's not going to be like that. But if we come to this book with those presuppositions, then that's how we interpret it. And that's how a lot of teachers and preachers interpret it, is because there's something that's in them that's already determined what the script is saying without the Spirit of truth guiding them. Because you have a lot of people, well, I want to get into church because I heard they're going up to the sky boxes in the Shamaim and they're going to miss everything down here. So they learn that before they even hear the gospel. I mean, but where did they get that from? If you look at that doctrine, where did they get that from? Then you go back to the Darby, you go back to the Pilgrim Brotherhood. That's where that was originated from. What didn't Paul talk about in 1 Corinthians 15 chapter of being changed? Yes, he did. In a moment and twinkling of an eye, he said this mortal must put on immortality. So there is a transition from being mortal to being immortal. There is a transition on that. You have some that will survive the Yom of Yahuwah, the day of Yah. Some people that will survive that and remain, and then they're going to be transitioned from this life to being with him. And where is he going to be? He's going to be here on earth. He's going to be here on earth. Now, those who don't survive and they might go to the grave, well, when he does return, like Brother Shaul said, we're not going to prevent those that are in the grave. Those that are in the grave, they're going to come up out. That's a resurrection, and they're going to be like him just like us who have remained are going to be like him. And so we're going to transition into a state of being that Christ said is like the angels in heaven. He said our transition is going to be like that, because remember they gave the parable of the man, the woman that her first husband died, and then the second husband, all the way down to seven. Whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection? He said none of them, because those who make that resurrection and those who have that transition from mortal to immortality, the people who do that will be as the angels in heaven. So we have a transition to where this mortal must put on immortality. And that's what Shaul was saying in 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. I'm going to show you a mystery. We ain't all going to sleep. We're not all going to stay in the grave, but we're going to be changed in a moment, in twinkling of an eye. And then in Corinth, or in Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, I think it is, 2nd chapter, and he says that those who survive, those who are alive and survive, because when you look up that word in Thessalonians where it says remain, that remain are those who were left behind. That's what that means. But we have not been taught that, because we've been taught through presuppositions that that's not what it's saying. What that's saying is you're going to be elevated to the skyboxes in the Shamayim. And then you'll be able to look down and see everything that's going on the earth. And that's not what it says. That's not the correct interpretation of the script, because you're interpreting it through a different language and a different culture. You're not interpreting the script through the language and the culture in which it was written. And that's where we get off base. And he even says the faith of some is going to be lost. You got some folks just going to lose faith. They're just going to lose faith. Because you can hear something that is not true all your life, to where if you hear something true, it doesn't sound like truth. It doesn't sound like, no, that's not true. Why isn't it not true? Because I've been told this all my life. So you could be told something all your life. It's not necessarily true, but you've been told that all your life, so that's what you believe. So when somebody comes with that's why you have to be careful when the interpretation of the Holy Script is done through a different language and through a different culture. That's dangerous. I want to get back to where I started today. But woe unto you that desire the day of Yah. To what end is it for you? The day of Yah is darkness and not light. It's as if a man flee from a lion and a bear met him. So you running for your life and you think, man, I don't know how I did it, but I outran that lion. And then there's a bear ready to bite your head off. You can't run no more. You're tired. You can't run no more, so a bear is there to get you. Or went into a house and leaned on his hand on the wall and a serpent bit him. So you finally found a place of refuge. You think you got a place of refuge. I'm safe in the house. Come on into the house. That old serpent, come on into the house. So you come on into the house and you think you're safe and you put your hand on the wall and you get bit. He said that's how the day of Yah is going to be. What is he saying? It's not what you think. There ain't no safe place, and it's really not what you think. The day of Yah is not what you think. It ain't no joke. It's a day that should be feared. It's a day that should be respected. And it's a day that's coming. It's a day that's coming. And then verse 20, shall not the day of Yah be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it? That's why he said, you need to work while it's day, because the night's coming, can't nobody work. Can't see, you ain't gonna figure. The day of darkness, you can't see. What if you don't have no understanding? That's why I think the day of Yah has already begun. Already begun. Because Jesus said only a few's going to find it. In that last day, only a few's going to find it. You can have a church full of folks and start teaching this, and it clears out. Watch. It'll clear out. He said there's going to be a famine for his word. A lot of folks don't want to hear the word. I want to hear the word, I just don't want to hear it like that. But there's only one holy script. There's only one. Now, it's left up to a lot of different interpretations. That's why he said there's no private interpretation. So it can't be no private interpretation. So if the word is not, and the spirit is not linked to the word, and the word linked to the spirit, to where it brings knowledge and revelation and understanding, then you got to be careful. Got to be careful. He warns us. So back to where we was at, Deuteronomy 5. I'm going to hear him finish this up because I've been going for a little while now. But verse number 11, thou shalt not take the name of Yah thy Elohim in vain, for Yah will not hold guiltless that take his name in vain. Y'all don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it, because if you don't know his name, you can't take it in vain. That's it. If you don't know his name, you can't take it in vain, so you're safe. That's good. Brother preacher, I don't want to know his name then. I don't want to know his name. Because I don't want to take it in vain. So let's look at what does it mean, vain, in the Hebrew context, in the Hebrew script. So you have to go to the Hebrew lexicon, and it's H7723. H7723. And in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, it's number 1461-JN. So in the context that this is being used, you have to go to J and N. So I scroll down here into the Hebrew context looking for J and then N. It says tumult, noise, tumult, rushing, horrible, pomp, right? Okay, I'm going to go down here. Here's J. It says storm, desolate, a desolating storm. And what was the other one? N, right? Was that the last one? A loud and destructive crashing of thunder or waves, desolation, destruction, desolate, destroy, storm, wasteness. So that's not how his name, I can't do that with his name. Wasteful. To make it desolate. Something that's desolate is what? Void. What else is desolate? When you say desolate, what is? Here's what I say. It's like a desert or a wasteland. Mm-hmm. Nothing's there. It's just nothingness. It's desolate. It's destroyed. When you destroy something, it's desolate. So it's destroyed. So he said, don't do that to my name. Well, if you don't know his name, that's safe. Proverbs 30 and verse number 4. Who have ascended up into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou can tell? So he challenges you to know his name. It's actually a challenge. He says, what is his name? Who does this? Who's able to do that? What is his name? And what is his son's name, if you can tell? Well, I don't know his name. So should I just leave it desolate? Or should I take it upon myself to know his name? I'm going to pull out a few more scriptures because I'm going to finish up here. But in Exodus, I think it's 6, verse number 3. I'm going to go there. Then I want to go to Isaiah. I'm going to pull out some scriptures real quick. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name of Elohim Almighty. But by my name, Yahuwah, was I not known to them. Now I know a lot of people say, well, that's not known. You're not pronouncing it right. No, this is not pronouncing it right. Because it's 4 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, or the tetragrammaton, which is 4 letters. And those 4 letters are Yod, He, U, He. Yod, A, Hu, He. Yod, A, U, He. And it's actually vowels, not consonants. So it's Yahuwah. He even says, okay, let's go to Psalms real quick here. I want to try to bring out some things. Psalms 68 and verse number 4. Sing unto Elohim, sing praises to his name. Exalt him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Yah, and rejoice before him. Wait a minute, that's not, that's a J there. There's no J in the Hebrew language, so it's Yah. He rides in the heavens by his name, Yah. Okay, so Isaiah, let's look at 42 and verse number 8. Let's look at 42 and verse number 8. He says, I am Yah, or Yahuwah. I am Yah, Yahuwah. That is my name. Actually, he's saying Yahuwah Shem. In Hebrew, we say Yahuwah Shem, because Shem is name. So in English, we put in a lot of these other things. Even in this script here, the am and is in italic. It was added for simplification, just to kind of simplify it. But he's saying Yahuwah Shem. He just announces his name, Yahuwah. When you study, we're not to go there, but Genesis 1, verse number 3. In that verse, and you look up those words in Hebrew, when it says there be is Ahia. Ahia. So when he says it to Moses, Ahia, Ashur, Ahia, what he's saying is that which was from the beginning, from the very beginning, when I spoke from the beginning, Ahia, that's who I am. I'm Ahia. I'm from the beginning, and I have no end, and I'll be whatever I want to be. That's basically what he's saying. Ahia, Ashur, Ahia. That's what he told him, and that you'll find Ahia in Genesis 1 and 3. But he says, Yahuwah, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. So let's go to Isaiah 47. Let's see, verse number 4, I think it is. Yeah. Isaiah 47 and 4. As for our Redeemer, Yah of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel, or the Holy One of Yasharal. Okay, let's see. Let's get some other witnesses. Jeremiah 50, verse number, this is a good chapter. But let's go down verse 33. Thus saith Yah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer strong. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. Shem. That's his Shem. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. And we are in, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we are in the daughter of Babylon. That's where we are right now. The daughter of Babylon. I want to get some more, because it's all over. His name in the Torah is mentioned over 6,800 times in Torah. So it should be without mistake. Okay? Let's go to, I'm going to go to Amos 5, and I want to go down here because he gives his name. Here it is, Amos 5 and 8. Seek him that maketh the 7 stars of Orion, and turneth the shadow of death into morning, and maketh the day dark with night, that calleth the waters of the sea, and poureth them out upon the face of the earth. Yahuwah is his name. So he gives it here again. So we got different prophets that are speaking, different witnesses, all the way from Moshe or Moses, even down Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moshe wrote about them. The children of Israel, through the prophets. I want to get one more, and that's in Psalms 83 and verse number 18. That men may know that thou, whose name alone is Yahuwah, whose name alone, Yahuwah. And who is he? The Most High over all the earth. Why is he saying the Most High over all the earth? Because he said Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't know me by my name. They knew me by Elohim Almighty. That was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what he was telling Moshe. But you guys are going to know me by my name, because you're a nation now. So you're going to know me by my name. Throughout the prophets, it talks about his name. Now here he says, that men may know that thou, whose name alone, Yahuwah, the Most High over all the earth. He's the Most High over all the earth. What is the significance of being the Most High over all the earth? So you'll see that in Joel because this now this here in Joel, to kind of set this, you know who spoke about this? You know who spoke about Joel? Yeah, on the day of Pentecost, right? Isn't this what he said? And listen to what Joel the prophet said. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. This is what the apostle Kepha or Peter, this is what he said. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. Has that happened yet? So what he said in Acts, the 2nd chapter, when he preached, he was preaching from Joel about a time that hasn't happened in our generation. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yah come. And it shall come to pass. Now he said this in the book of Acts. And it shall come to pass, whosoever shall call on the name of Yah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yah hath said, and in the remnant whom Yah shall call. Notice now, he's not calling everybody. He's not calling everybody. I'm only calling the remnant. He even said in Psalms 87, I'm going to take up an account. I'm going to see which one, this one and that one, is born in her. Remember in Psalms 83, he says, my name is Yahuwah. I am the most high of what? Over all the earth. I'm the most high over all the earth. He has to establish that, because listen to verse 32 here. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. Now let's look at what that means in the Hebrew text. Let's look at going to the Hebrew text, let's look at delivered, because he says he's going to deliver them. That's H4422. H4422, and it's 2339 in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible. V. So what does it mean? Deliver. What does it mean? Escape, deliver, save, alone, get, lay, preserve. So those that are able to escape, those that will be, notice now, alone. What do you mean alone? Because he said, if you are able to survive, because he said, those who are alive and remain, those, if you look that up, it means left behind. These are the ones that were left alone. And so those who are preserved, that remnant, because he says only a remnant is going to be able to escape in this day. In this day that we're living in, only a remnant is going to be able to escape. Just a remnant. And he says they'll be able to be delivered. That remnant is only going to be delivered because they're going to call on me. So when Peter quoted Joel in the 2nd chapter of Acts, when he quoted Joel, because we read it in what language? We read it in English. So our perspective is off because we're reading it in a language and we come into it with presuppositions. We've already decided, coming in here, we've already decided what it is. Before we even open up the book and read it, we've decided what it is. I've already decided, I already know what it is. That's that presupposition. Because Peter quoted the prophet Joel. And it was blasphemous for them to say Lord. Now, like I said, the Shabbat classes ain't for the faint of heart. And for those who might, like it says in Habakkuk, he says, you live by what? Your faith. You hold in there on your faith, because he says, write it plain, put it on the tablets, and let it run, or you guys run, because understanding revelation is going to come, but you have to wait on it. Remember it says that? You got to wait. Don't get in a hurry. Just wait. You just live by your faith. Live by your faith. You hold on to it, because understanding and revelation will come. But it'll come to you when you're ready. Everybody's not ready. They can't handle it. Well, you live by your faith then. If you can't handle this, live by your faith. Don't get out of pocket. Man, Hazel knocked them all out of pocket. I'm not trying to knock nobody out of pocket. You hold on and live by your faith, because it's going to come to you. Let's revisit that again. But I want to, before we go back to Habakkuk, because I'm going to finish up there. But whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yah have said, and in the remnant whom Yahuwah shall call. Now, what I do is, when I read it in English, I'm putting in the Hebrew text that I know, with the understanding that I have of the culture, because I don't have it all, because I'm learning it. So I'm trying to present it with the little bit of knowledge that I know, not to throw anybody out of pocket, because you have to be born again of water and spirit, and you've got to hold on to the faith that you have. That's what he said in Habakkuk. He said, the just is going to live by his faith. Now, you got to live by that faith. But who do you have faith in? Who is your faith in? Because the day is coming. Now, does he understand all languages? Yes. What was written on the cross? Do you know there was no English language on the cross? Not one English word. So when we read English, we're coming with a background or a culture where that language comes from. And so our understanding of the book is through that culture. That's why somebody who is raised in Judea and studies this Hebrew script, and from their culture, they look at us and go, what are you guys talking about? Where are you guys coming from? That's not how the text is written. That's not how we understand the text. Well, that's because we've gotten it from the linguistics and the language and the culture that we are raised in. That's where we get it from. Well, it wasn't given to the Queen of England. It was not given to the King of England. The King of England at the time, King James, took the Latin Vulgate and translated it into English for the Anglican Catholic Church. That was the reason why you had the Latin Vulgate translated into the English language by King James. It was for the Anglican Catholic Church. That's what it was for. The king authorized it. And the first edition of the King James Version, many of us would not be able to understand it, because it has that old English. It had to be refined a little bit a few times. And I found out that the King James that I have at home, which is the 1611 edition, King James what I have at home, actually it's been refined 3 times. I didn't realize that till I dug into it a little deeper. Because even the copy that I have has been refined. It's like the 3rd. because they revised it to make it sound more Anglican, more English. Yes.
So I mean, I've heard 1611. So how do we get to the first edition? How do we get?
I don't.
Get that?
You might be able to get. It's going to be hard to find. You might be able to get it. Not too many people have it. There's some books out there that's just hard to get because they're way overpriced. And even that first edition, unless you know that Old English, you probably won't be able to follow it very much. Yeah, it's the 1611. Yeah, it's 16. Yeah, I got the 1611, but it's not the original, the first one. It's been refined a little bit to make it a little easier to understand. But what we look at V's in our English language is V, but in their language it's a U. U. Their I's, they didn't have, even in the edition that I have, there's no J. There's no J. So when you see his name, it's IESVS. That's how it's written in that IESVS. It's not JESUS. It's IESVS. But the V, you don't got that V sound. It's not like that, even though it looks like that. And that's how we would look at someone. What is he even saying? You're trying to do the V because you see a V, but that's not how it's pronounced. It's not how it's pronounced. After it was refined a few times, and now we've got this King James Version, they have a new King James Version out now, which reads a little different. In fact, it has some different words in it than our King James. Not that it's worse, because there's some places, like, now I don't have the New King James, but they said that in Acts the 12th chapter, it doesn't say EASTER. It says Passover. It says Passover. It doesn't say EASTER. Also in the New King James Version, in Psalm 68 and 4, it doesn't have JAH. It has YAH as Yah. I mean, they actually show Yah. So it's not that, well, I don't like the New King James Version. It doesn't read like the old King James Version. Well, there's you just have to get it. In fact, when I'm studying, I read different versions. I look at different versions. I'm not stuck just on the King James Version. I look at different versions and see how they're read. I'll even go to the Latin Vulgate, and I can't speak no Koine Greek. Greek is just totally Greek to me. But I try to look at the Latin Vulgate. But I do have a Bible study that translates the Koine Greek into English. So when I look at the Septuagint, I can read the Septuagint in English from the Koine Greek, which is helpful because it reads a little bit different. So some people say, well, which is the right one to use? No, you just have to, get you a version that you like to read that you can understand. But as a teacher, I have to broaden my base, and I have to understand, try to understand the script so that I can feed, so I can teach. But this is the last verse. I'm done. Habakkuk, and it was 2, right? And verse number 2, this is kind of where I started. I'm going to finish up here. And Yah answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. That you might run, you might be able to go with it. This run is, when you look at Hebrews, the 12th chapter, and it says, wherefore we're compassed about with a great cloud of witnesses. He says, let us run with patience, the race that is set before us. So this here running is more like something that when you read it, have some patience. Have patience. Because he even says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. he says, though it tarry or takes a little long time, what does he say? Wait for it. You wait for that vision. Wait for it to become revelation. Wait for that understanding to come. He says, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Just keep the faith. Stay in that faith. That faith that you was born to stay in that faith. Keep the faith, because revelation will come. Even though it might come a little slow, I'm not getting it. No, you just wait. He says, wait on it. He says that he may run that readeth it. That run there is dealing with patience, that you might have, as you go along with this, you might have some patience. Don't get out of pocket. Some folks get out of pocket and you know, they feel that they've been, you know, that can't be the truth, because I've heard this all my life, and I'm not changing now. Well, nobody's trying to knock you out of pocket. You know, keep the faith. You know, just let the revelation come, let the understanding come. His day is upon us, and you got to know how to call on him. That's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to prepare people that you know how to call on him in that day. Well, what about his son? What about the name? He gave his son for our salvation. His son was given for the forgiveness of sin, that blood to bring us back into covenant. That son is the arm of salvation to draw us back unto him. That son is the name of birth in water. But he said he's not, so he does want you to know his name. So with that, I do say Shabbat Shalom. If there's no more questions out there, we're certainly glad to have you here on this Shabbat day. We say grace and mercy to all that have joined us in this presentation. We're just going to wind it on down now and bid everybody a day of peace, a day of shalom, a day of rest. This is a day that we're supposed to rest. And you are blessed. If you are faithful unto him, what you believe, and you're faithful unto him, you're blessed. You're blessed. So, shalom.